The subway train stopped moving at exactly 2:13 a.m. At first, nobody panicked. People were used to delays. Even during the outbreak, the train still ran sometimes beneath the city while everything above ground collapsed into chaos. The government kept telling everyone the underground tunnels were safer than the streets. Remain calm. Emergency transport is still active. Shelters are operating below the city. More lies. The lights inside the train flickered once before dying completely. Darkness swallowed the subway car instantly. A few passengers cursed under their breath. Someone near the back laughed nervously. Then the screaming started somewhere farther down the tunnel. Not close. Not yet. But close enough to hear. The entire train became silent. Even the children stopped talking. I sat frozen beside the subway window staring into complete darkness outside while distant screams echoed through the tunnel walls. Then came gunshots. 3 loud shots. Followed by more screaming. A woman beside me whispered softly, "Oh God!" Emergency lights finally activated overhead, flooding the train car with dim red light. Everyone suddenly looked terrified under that color. Tired faces. Sweating. People clutching bags full of supplies like their lives depended on them. Because they did. A man near the train doors stood up immediately. "We need to get out." Another passenger shook his head violently. "Are you insane? There could be infected out there." "There are infected everywhere," the man snapped back. Nobody argued with him. Not anymore. The outbreak had already destroyed the city above us in less than 2 weeks. Hospitals collapsed first. Then police stations. Then entire neighborhoods stopped answering emergency broadcasts altogether. The military sealed the bridges 3 days ago. Anyone still underground now was either hiding or trapped. Another scream echoed through the tunnel. Closer this time. Then pounding. Heavy metal impacts somewhere outside the train. The emergency lights flickered again. A child started crying near the front car. His mother covered his mouth immediately. Smart woman. Noise attracted them. We all knew that now. The train speakers suddenly crackled overhead. Static filled the subway car for several seconds before a voice finally broke through. Weak. Panicked. All passengers remain inside the train. Gunshots echoed behind the voice. Then screaming. Then static again. The passengers looked at each other silently. Nobody believed the announcement. A loud crash suddenly echoed from the car ahead of us. People flinched instantly. Another crash followed. Then shouting. I stood up slowly and looked through the narrow glass window separating our car from the next one. At first I couldn't see clearly under the flashing emergency lights. Then something slammed against the glass from the other side. Blood exploded across the window. Several passengers screamed. A subway security officer stumbled backward into view, clutching his neck while an infected passenger tore into him from behind. The train erupted into panic instantly. People shoved each other trying to escape deeper into the car while others forced themselves toward the emergency doors. The infected lifted its head slowly. Its mouth dripped blood onto the floor. And behind it, more passengers were already turning. The subway car exploded into chaos. People screamed while pushing each other toward the emergency exits at both ends of the train. Some tried forcing the doors open manually. Others crawled beneath seats crying in panic. Nobody knew where to run. The infected security officer collapsed onto the floor while another passenger immediately fell on top of him, biting into his face. Blood sprayed across the subway windows. The emergency lights flickered violently overhead. A man beside me grabbed my jacket. "We have to leave now." Before I could answer, the train doors finally hissed open automatically. Freezing air flooded inside the car instantly. The tunnel beyond looked endless under dim maintenance lights stretching through darkness beneath the city. People rushed outside immediately. Big mistake. The screaming in the tunnels became louder the second the doors opened. And now we could hear footsteps too. Fast footsteps. Running through the darkness toward the train. I jumped onto the subway tracks with the crowd just as infected passengers flooded into our car behind us. The tunnel air was freezing cold and smelled like rust, smoke, and something rotten hiding deep underground. Emergency lights lined the tunnel walls, every few meters glowing weakly through drifting dust and steam. Ahead of us, dozens of passengers sprinted deeper into the tunnels blindly. Some carried children. Others dragged luggage behind them. One woman ran barefoot through freezing water between the tracks. Then the lights ahead suddenly went out. One section at a time. Darkness swallowing the tunnel toward us. People slowed immediately. "What's happening? Keep moving," someone screamed farther ahead. Then shapes emerged from the darkness. Not passengers. Infected. Dozens of them. Rail workers. Transit police. Civilians covered in blood. They rushed through the tunnel straight toward us. The first collision happened so fast I barely understood what I was seeing. A businessman near the front disappeared beneath three infected instantly. His flashlight rolled across the tracks while screaming echoed through the tunnel. Everyone turned around at once. Now people were running both directions. Toward the infected. Away from them. Straight into each other. Complete panic. I shoved through the crowd toward a side maintenance door built into the tunnel wall. A young woman in a heavy winter coat reached it at the same time I did. Locked. She looked at me with pure terror. Behind us the infected were getting closer fast. People slipped on the wet tracks trying to escape. Some never got back up. I grabbed the emergency hammer beside the tunnel wall and smashed it against the maintenance door window. Once. Twice. The glass shattered inward. The woman climbed through first while I pulled myself inside behind her seconds before infected reached the doorway. One of them slammed against the metal frame hard enough to shake the entire wall. I kicked the door shut immediately. Darkness swallowed us whole. For a moment neither of us moved. We just listened to the tunnel outside. Screaming, running, biting. Then eventually, silence. The woman beside me switched on a tiny flashlight with shaking hands. The beam revealed a narrow underground maintenance corridor stretching deeper beneath the city. And somewhere far inside the darkness, something metallic scraped slowly against concrete. The scraping sound echoed again somewhere deeper in the maintenance corridor. Slow. Metal against concrete. The woman beside me tightened her grip on the flashlight immediately. "What the hell was that?" she whispered. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. The tunnel outside had gone almost completely silent now except for distant infected noises echoing far away through the subway system. That silence felt worse somehow. Like the city underground was holding its breath. The woman aimed the flashlight farther down the corridor. Old maintenance pipes lined the walls beside electrical panels covered in rust and frost. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling into puddles along the concrete floor. The corridor looked abandoned for years. And freezing cold. "I'm Claire," the woman whispered finally. "Daniel. You think the tunnels are connected to the surface, maybe. Honestly, I doubted it. Most subway exits were probably overrun already, or collapsed, or frozen shut." Another metallic scrape echoed through the darkness ahead. Closer now. Claire flinched hard enough to nearly drop the flashlight. "We can't stay here." She was right. The problem was we had no idea where the corridor actually led. Still better than dying on the tracks. We started moving carefully through the underground passage while the weak flashlight beam shook constantly in Claire's hands. Every sound felt amplified down there. Footsteps, breathing, water dripping from pipes. The city above us might as well not have existed anymore. After several minutes, we reached a heavy steel maintenance door standing partially open. Cold air drifted through the gap. And light. Very faint light. Claire looked at me nervously. "You go first." "Absolutely not." For the first time since meeting her, she almost smiled. Then a scream echoed from the subway tunnel behind us. "Close. Way too close." That made the decision for us. I pushed the steel door open slowly. The room beyond looked massive. An underground subway maintenance station hidden beneath the tracks tools. Generators. Broken train parts scattered across the floor. And lights. Real lights. Dim yellow industrial lights still hanging from the ceiling somehow powered on. But that wasn't the important part. People were inside. About 15 survivors turned toward us instantly the second we entered. Some held weapons, pipes, knives. One man even carried a shotgun. Nobody looked friendly. A tall bearded man near the generators aimed the shotgun directly at my chest. "Door," he said calmly. I shut it immediately behind us. The room stayed silent for several seconds. Everyone stared at us like they were deciding whether we were worth trusting or killing. Finally, the bearded man lowered the shotgun slightly. "You bitten?" "No," I answered. Claire shook her head too. A little girl sitting near a heater whispered quietly to her mother. More people. The mother didn't answer. The bearded man studied us carefully before speaking again. "You came from the train." I nodded slowly. His expression darkened immediately. "How many infected followed you?" Before I could answer, something slammed against the maintenance door behind us, hard enough to shake the entire room. Every survivor instantly reached for their weapons. Then came another impact, and another. The infected had found us. The entire maintenance room froze. Nobody spoke. Nobody even breathed loudly. The infected slammed against the steel door again. Boom! Dust drifted from the ceiling pipes overhead. The bearded man raised the shotgun immediately while two other survivors shoved a heavy toolbox against the entrance. Another impact bent the metal inward slightly. Claire backed away slowly beside me. "How did they find us already?" she whispered. Nobody answered. Because everyone was thinking the same thing. Something from the train must have followed us through the tunnels. The little girl near the heater started crying softly. Her mother covered her mouth instantly. "Quiet," the woman whispered desperately. The infected outside the door began growling louder. More footsteps echoed through the corridor beyond the entrance. Not one infected. Several. Maybe dozens. The bearded man looked toward a younger survivor holding a flashlight. "Kill the generator lights." "What now?" The survivor rushed toward the power controls beside the wall. A second later, the underground station went dark except for two tiny emergency lanterns near the floor. The room disappeared into shadows immediately. The infected outside quieted almost instantly. That scared me more than the banging. It was like they were listening, waiting. Nobody inside the station moved anymore. The only sounds left were distant tunnel noises and the freezing wind rattling through the underground pipes. Then finally, the growling outside slowly faded. Footsteps moved away from the door one by one. The infected were leaving, at least for now. Several survivors collapsed against the walls from relief. The bearded man lowered the shotgun and looked directly at me. "You brought them here." I frowned immediately. "We didn't know this place existed." "Doesn't matter," another survivor snapped. "Now they know too." Claire stepped forward angrily. "We saved your asses by shutting that door before they got inside." The room almost exploded into another argument before the bearded man raised his hand. Enough. Silence returned instantly. That told me everything about who controlled this place. The bearded man studied us for another few seconds before finally speaking. My name's Harris. He pointed around the underground station. This is all that's left of the Riverside Line survivors. I looked around more carefully now. People slept beside old subway equipment wrapped in blankets and winter coats. Empty food cans covered the floor near the heaters. Everyone looked exhausted, starving, and terrified. How long have you been down here? I asked. 18 days. That number hit hard. 18 days underground. Harris noticed my expression. Surface is worse. Maybe he was right. But this place didn't feel safe either. Not even close. A sudden metallic screech echoed somewhere deeper in the underground station. Every survivor reacted instantly. Some grabbed weapons. Others looked toward the darkness behind the generators. Claire whispered beside me. What was that? Harris didn't answer immediately, which meant he already knew. Finally he spoke quietly. There are tunnels beneath the tunnels. The room stayed silent. Then a survivor near the back muttered nervously, and something's been moving down there at night. Nobody liked talking about the lower tunnels. I realized that immediately. The moment Harris mentioned them, the entire underground station became tense. People avoided eye contact. Some pretended not to listen. Others checked the darkness behind the generators nervously, like they expected something to emerge from it at any second. Claire crossed her arms tightly. What do you mean tunnels beneath the tunnels? Harris sighed tiredly. Old maintenance systems. Flood channels. Abandoned rail lines nobody uses anymore. A skinny man sitting beside the heaters muttered quietly, something lives down there now. Harris shot him an angry look immediately. That's enough. But the damage was done. Now everyone looked uncomfortable. Even Harris. The little girl near the heater whispered to her mother again. Is the scratching coming back tonight? The mother hugged her tighter without answering. That sentence alone made my stomach tighten. Harris walked toward a map hanging beside the generators. The infected rarely come this deep underground, he explained. Too dark. Too cold. No easy way in. Then why are you hiding down here? Claire asked. Because the surface is suicide. Fair point. Outside the station, the city above was probably frozen solid by now, and full of infected. Still, something about this place felt wrong. Too quiet. Too tense. Then I noticed the barricade. At the far end of the underground station, several heavy maintenance vehicles had been pushed together, blocking a massive tunnel entrance descending deeper underground. Chains wrapped around the vehicles tightly. Warning lights blinked weakly beside the barricade. and scratched across the concrete wall nearby were deep claw marks. Claire noticed them too. What made those? Nobody answered. That was answer enough. A loud clang suddenly echoed from somewhere beyond the barricade. Every survivor froze instantly. Then came scratching. Slow scratching against metal. The little girl started crying immediately. One survivor whispered, "Oh God." Harris grabbed the shotgun again. Lights off. The station went dark instantly. Only the weak heater glow remained near the floor. The scratching beyond the barricade continued. Closer now. Something moved slowly behind the blocked tunnel entrance. Heavy. Dragging itself across concrete. Claire moved closer beside me and whispered, "That's not infected." I was thinking the exact same thing. The normal infected screamed, ran, smashed into things mindlessly. Whatever this was, moved differently. The scratching stopped completely. Silence filled the underground station. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed loudly. Then a deep metallic bang echoed from behind the barricade. The chained maintenance vehicles shifted slightly. Several survivors panicked immediately. "It's trying to get through, shut up," Harris hissed. Another impact shook the barricade harder. Dust rained from the ceiling pipes. The shotgun trembled slightly in Harris's hands now. That scared me more than the noise itself. Because if Harris was afraid, this thing had happened before. Then suddenly all the emergency lanterns flickered. Once, twice, and went out completely. Total darkness swallowed the underground station. For a few seconds the only thing we could hear was breathing. Then somewhere deep beneath us, something roared. The roar didn't sound human. It echoed through the underground tunnels like metal tearing apart somewhere beneath the station. Several survivors screamed instantly. Others started praying. In the darkness, I heard Harris rack another shotgun shell into place with shaking hands. "Lights," someone whispered desperately. "Get the damn lights back on." A flashlight suddenly clicked alive near the generators. Then another. Weak beams swept across terrified faces inside the underground station. The barricade at the far tunnel entrance still held, but barely. One of the chain maintenance trucks had shifted almost half a meter sideways across the concrete floor. Claire stared at it in disbelief. "What the hell is down there?" Nobody answered immediately. Then the skinny survivor near the heaters finally spoke. "There were people trapped in the lower tunnels when the outbreak started." Harris turned toward him angrily. "Shut up." But the man kept talking anyway. "They sealed the lower stations to stop the infected from reaching the surface. Workers, passengers, transit police, hundreds of people." The room stayed silent except for the distant scratching beyond the barricade. The man swallowed nervously. No food, no heat, no way out. A horrible realization slowly formed in my stomach. Claire looked at Harris. You left them down there? We didn't have a choice. Harris snapped back immediately. The military ordered the tunnels sealed. Another impact slammed against the barricade. Much harder this time. One of the chains snapped loudly. Several survivors backed away in panic. The scratching became faster now. Aggressive. Like whatever was down there knew we were listening. The little girl buried her face against her mother, crying quietly. Then the station speakers suddenly crackled overhead. Everyone jumped. Static filled the underground room before a distorted voice finally emerged. Attention Riverside survivors. The voice sounded old. Broken. Like the speaker system barely worked anymore. Breach detected. Lower tunnel access compromised. The survivors stared upward silently. Then the voice changed. Not the words. The tone. It suddenly sounded wrong. Wet. Almost growling beneath the static. Still hungry. Every light in the station flickered violently. Then the speakers screamed with deafening feedback. People covered their ears instantly. The barricade shook again. Another chain snapped. The maintenance vehicles moved several inches backward across the floor. Harris shouted immediately. Everyone grabbed something. Pipes. Tools. Anything. The survivors rushed desperately around the station searching for weapons while the scratching beyond the barricade turned into violent impacts. Boom. 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 Claire grabbed a metal wrench from the floor beside the generators. I picked up a rusted transit hammer. Not exactly reassuring. Then suddenly the emergency lights turned back on. Dim red light flooded the underground station again. And for the first time, we saw movement beneath the barricade. Fingers. Dozens of pale fingers slowly reaching through the gap under the maintenance trucks. Not normal infected fingers. Longer. Thinner. Almost skeletal. The little girl screamed. And something on the other side screamed back. The scream behind the barricade sounded inhuman. Not loud. Not wild like the normal infected. This sounded deeper. Almost intelligent. The pale fingers beneath the maintenance trucks twitched violently against the concrete while survivors backed away in terror across the underground station. The little girl cried harder beside the heaters. Her mother covered her eyes immediately. Harris aimed the shotgun toward the barricade with both hands shaking now. Everybody moved back. Another violent impact slammed into the maintenance vehicles. One truck lifted partially off the ground before crashing back down again. People screamed. The chains wrapped around the barricade stretched tight enough to groan loudly through the station. Claire stepped beside me, gripping the wrench so tightly her knuckles turned white. That thing is getting through. She was right. Everyone knew it. The normal infected weren't strong enough to move maintenance trucks. Whatever was down there was different. The scratching beneath the barricade suddenly stopped. Complete silence filled the underground station. Nobody moved. Then a voice echoed softly from beyond the trucks. "Help!" Several survivors froze instantly. A woman's voice. Weak. Crying. "Please help us." Claire looked toward Harris in disbelief. "There are survivors down there." Harris didn't answer. But the skinny man near the heaters whispered quietly, "No." The voice beyond the barricade cried again. "We're freezing." Then more voices joined it. Dozens. Men. Women. Children. All begging softly through the darkness beneath the tunnels. The little girl near the heater tried stepping toward the barricade immediately. "My brother." Her mother grabbed her hard. "No." The voices kept talking over each other now. Begging. Crying. Asking for help. And underneath all of it, I heard growling. Very faint. But definitely there. Claire heard it too. Her face went pale instantly. "That's not people." The voices suddenly stopped together. Every single one at the exact same moment. Then something massive slammed against the barricade hard enough to shake the entire station. One maintenance truck tipped sideways. The gap beneath the barricade widened, and a face appeared underneath. At first I thought it was human. Then it smiled. Its skin looked stretched tightly over bone. White eyes reflected the emergency lights while frozen blood covered its mouth and neck. But the worst part, it was still talking. "Please." The creature pushed one arm through the opening beneath the truck. Its fingers bent wrong. Too many joints. Too long. The survivors panicked instantly. Harris fired the shotgun. The blast echoed like a bomb through the station. The creature vanished backward screaming into the darkness below. But the barricade finally gave way. Chains snapped violently. One maintenance truck rolled sideways across the concrete floor. And from the darkness beneath the tunnels, the infected started climbing out. The lower tunnel infected moved nothing like the others. They crawled over the fallen maintenance trucks unnaturally fast, twisting through gaps no human body should fit through. Their limbs looked thin and stretched. Bones pressed visibly beneath pale skin, and their eyes looked aware. Harris fired the shotgun again. The blast tore through the first creature climbing over the barricade, throwing it backward into the darkness below, but three more immediately replaced it. Survivors screamed and scattered across the underground station. One man near the generators slipped while trying to run. The creatures reached him instantly. I'll never forget the sound he made. Not because it was loud, because it stopped too fast. Claire grabbed my arm hard. "We have to move." Another infected launched itself over the barricade and crashed directly into one of the survivors near the heaters. Its jaw opened impossibly wide before biting into the man's throat. Blood sprayed across the emergency lights. The little girl cried hysterically while her mother dragged her toward the far maintenance hallway. Harris shouted over the chaos. "Back tunnel! Everybody move!" People rushed toward the narrow service corridor at the rear of the station while the lower tunnel infected flooded into the room behind us. Too many. Way too many. One creature suddenly stopped moving near the barricade and stared directly at me. Not mindless. Watching. Studying. That terrified me more than the attacking. Claire shoved me forward. "Daniel, run!" We sprinted into the rear corridor with the remaining survivors while screams echoed through the underground station behind us. The hallway was narrow and freezing cold with old pipes running along the ceiling dripping icy water onto the floor. Emergency lights flashed weakly overhead. Harris led the group while reloading the shotgun desperately. "How far does this tunnel go?" Claire shouted. "To an old evacuation platform." "Is it safe?" "No." At least he was honest. Behind us the infected poured into the corridor entrance. The sounds they made echoed horribly through the tunnel walls. Not screaming, almost whispering. Several survivors started falling behind already from exhaustion. The little girl's mother carried her through the freezing corridor while crying openly. Then the lights died again. Darkness swallowed us completely. People panicked instantly. Someone crashed into the pipes beside me. Another survivor screamed after slipping onto the wet concrete floor. Then came the growling. Right behind us now. Flashlights switched on wildly through the darkness. The beams revealed movement rushing toward us through the corridor. Pale bodies. White eyes. Fast. Too fast. Harris fired blindly down the hallway. The shotgun blast lit the tunnel for half a second. And in that moment, I saw dozens of them crawling along the walls and ceiling toward us like insects. The survivors broke completely after that. People ran blindly through the darkness. Some disappeared into side tunnels screaming. Others fell and never got back up. Claire grabbed my sleeve tightly while we pushed forward through the chaos. Then suddenly the corridor opened into a massive underground platform hidden beneath the city. Old subway tracks stretched endlessly into darkness. Abandoned trains sat frozen along the rails. And at the far end of the platform, a train was waiting with its lights still on. The train shouldn't have been running. That was the first thing I thought when I saw the lights. After weeks of blackout across the city, the sight of an illuminated subway train sitting silently beneath the underground platform felt impossible. The remaining survivors slowed instinctively. Nobody trusted it. The train doors stood open. Warm yellow light spilled across the frozen tracks. And yet, there was nobody inside. Harris lowered the empty shotgun slowly. "I don't like this." Neither did I. But behind us, the lower tunnel infected were still coming. Their growls echoed closer through the darkness every second. Claire pointed toward the platform speakers overhead. "They're working." A crackling voice suddenly filled the underground station. "Evacuation train now boarding." Everyone froze. The voice sounded calm. Too calm. "Final transport leaving Riverside tunnels." The little girl's mother started crying from relief immediately. "Oh my God!" Several survivors rushed toward the train doors. Harris grabbed one man's arm instantly. "Wait!" Too late. The survivor climbed inside the train first. For 1 second nothing happened. Then the lights inside the subway car flickered red, and the doors slammed shut behind him. The man spun around in panic. "Open the door." Something moved in the darkness at the far end of the train car. A silhouette. Tall. Thin. Standing perfectly still between the seats. The emergency lights flashed again, and suddenly there were more shapes inside the train. Dozens. The survivor started screaming while pounding against the subway doors desperately. Then the creatures attacked him all at once. Blood exploded across the windows. The little girl screamed. Claire stumbled backward in horror. And the train speakers crackled again. "Passengers accepted." That voice was smiling. The lower tunnel infected reached the platform entrance behind us seconds later. Pale bodies flooded onto the tracks, crawling unnaturally fast through the darkness. The survivors panicked instantly. Some ran toward the train anyway. Others fled deeper into the platform tunnels. Harris grabbed my jacket hard. There, at the far side of the underground platform, stood a narrow emergency staircase leading upward. Surface access. Maybe. The problem was the tracks between us and the stairs were already swarming with infected. Claire looked at me with pure terror in her eyes. "What do we do?" The train suddenly began moving slowly along the tracks inside the windows. Infected faces stared outward at us, smiling unnaturally beneath flashing red lights. The speaker voice echoed one final time across the underground platform. Doors closing. Then all the station lights died. Darkness swallowed the tunnels completely. The only things left visible were the train windows moving through the underground like glowing eyes beneath the frozen city. And all around us, the infected were getting closer.